Hi, my name is Nathan. You're watching Nice at Dice, and today I am doing a review for this game, Quantum. It's a game about spreading throughout the galaxy, doing battle with your ships versus your opponent's ships, and ultimately trying to build something called quantum cubes on the various planets of the galaxy. It's a somewhat abstract game with a light sci-fi theme to it. It can be rather tactical, somewhat strategic. I'm going to walk you through how the game works, and then we'll come back here and I'll give you my thoughts on it. So I have here a game of Quantum set up for 2 players. You can see you have a central board here with planets and these dice around the planets to start out with. These dice represent the ships in your fleet. I'll explain a little bit more about how that works in a moment. You also have a couple of decks of cards over here with some cards from each deck face up for players to choose from. And you have a player board for each player with a number of things on it. One of the things on each player board is a collection of these cubes. These are called quantum cubes. And the object of the game is to place all of your quantum cubes onto the board, placing them on planets like so. And that is how you win the game, to be the first person to get all of your cubes on the board. There's a couple of ways to get your cubes on the board, and I'll explain that in more detail in a moment. But to start with, let's talk a little bit about these dice that are on the board. They do represent your ships, and they give you a little bit of information, actually quite a bit of information, just from the value of the dice. Now, the value of the dice are random at the beginning of the game when you place them. But what these dice tell you is the combat power of that ship. Lower numbers are better. So a lower number is a stronger combat power. And it also tells you how far that ship can move. So in that case, higher numbers would be better. So right away you can see that there's sort of a dichotomy there, that stronger ships are slower, weaker ships are faster. Each of these, each value also corresponds to a special ability that ships of that value have. And all of that information is presented very nicely on the player boards. I'll show you a player board that is not in use so you can get a slightly better view of it. So as you can see here in the middle, you have the 6 different values that can show up on your dice, and the ships that they correspond to and the special abilities. I'll walk you through what all those special abilities actually are. You also have a quick summary of what you do on your turn, and you have a spot for your quantum cubes, a scrapyard, which I'll explain a little bit later, and you have a spot for a die that represents basically your combat dominance, and a spot for another die that's going to represent your research. So that's what the player boards look like. You also have 3 slots over here where you can put advancement cards. Again, I'll get to that in a minute, but I just wanted to point that out. And also, it's worth noting that this is a modular board. It's made up of tiles, in this case 3x3 to make up a 9-tile grid. And it also comes with some diagrams that show you some other possible setups for how to set up the board with different player counts. And if you want to play like an advanced game versus a basic game. So, lots of modularity there in the game. So, what are you doing on your turn? Well, basically you get to take 3 actions, and there are 5 possible actions that you can take. So you can take any 3 actions from those 5 possibilities. You can take the same action more than once on your turn. You don't have to use all of your actions, but any unused actions do not carry over, so they would be wasted. So, what are the actions you can do? Well, one of the actions you can do is you can just reconfigure. So, you can take any one of your dice, remember where it was, you can roll it again, and it came up a 2 again, so if it comes up the same number it was, you can re-roll it again, and as soon as it comes up a different number, you put it back in the same spot with that new number. So that's reconfiguring. You can basically turn a ship of one type into a ship of a different type. You can deploy, which, let's say we had one less ship out let's say it's in our scrapyard, and I'll explain a little bit later how you get ships into your scrapyard. But if you have a ship in your scrapyard, you can deploy it to a planet where you have a quantum cube, and each player starts out with one quantum cube already on the board. So you can put it in one of the 4 spots that are orthogonally adjacent to a planet with a quantum cube. That's deploying. You can also move and attack. So, for example, this ship is a 5. That's its movement value. So it can move 5 spaces. You can move orthogonally. You generally cannot move diagonally. So you could do something like that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I could even move to there. You cannot move onto planets. Planets are solid obstacles. You can't move on them. You can't end on them. You can't move through other ships. And you can't generally end on a space occupied by another ship, but you can do that in the case of enemy ships, which is how combat works. So let's say this guy, he's got a 4. He can move 1, 2, 3, 4. And then let's say on the green player's next turn, he goes ahead and moves in to attack. So you have to move at least 1 space to attack, and you just kind of slide over into the other person's space to indicate that you are attacking them. Then each player is going to roll one of these dice. The attacking player rolls the black die, the defending player rolls the white, and you add those values to to the values of the ships. And you're looking for a low value. So in this case, blue player has a value of 5, green player has a value of 10. So the defender would win. In the case of a defender winning, the attacker just gets pushed back into the space they were attacking from, and nothing happens. You don't risk anything by attacking. But let's say on the blue player's next turn, he decides to attack the green player. They roll again, and now we see what happens. So the blue player has a total of 7 versus the green player's total of 10. That means the blue player has the lower number. He wins the battle. We're going to set these aside. The green die is destroyed, so we roll it. And whatever value it comes up, it goes to the green player's scrapyard, from which he can redeploy it on a later turn. The blue player now has the option to stay in the space he was attacking from, or move into the space he was attacking into. And the blue player gets to take his die, which represents his combat dominance, and move it up by 1 value. So remember that the object of the game is to get all of your cosmic, I want to say cosmic cubes, but quantum cubes onto the board. One of the ways you can do that is if you get your dominance all the way up to 6, then you get to place one of these quantum cubes onto any planet on the board where you don't already have a quantum cube. And then this resets to 1. The green player lost that combat, so if his dominance had been higher than 1, say if it had been 4, because of losing a battle, it would have gotten bumped down to 3. So every time there's a battle and the attacker wins the battle, then the attacker gains dominance and the defender loses dominance. In the case of the defender winning the battle, nothing changes. So that's the third type of action. We had reconfigure, we had deploy, we had move and attack. The fourth type of action is to construct a cube. So we explained that you can add cubes to the board simply by getting your dominance high enough, but another way you can add cubes to the board is by placing ships around a planet in orbital position. So the orbital positions are the 4 spots orthogonally adjacent to the planet. And the value of your ships have to equal the value of the planet. So we have here 8. So now I can use 2 actions to build a quantum cube on that planet. So that's what I can do. The final action that you could take is to research, which is simply take this die that represents your research level, bump it up 1 value. And that's that action. After taking 3 actions, you're going to get advancement cards if you have earned them. One way you can earn advancement cards is if you bump your research all the way up to 6. At the end of the turn, you're going to bring it back down to 1 and get a advancement card. The other way you can get an advancement card is by placing a quantum cube on your turn. For each quantum cube that you place, you earn an advancement card. There are two decks of advancement cards. There's this black deck over here and this white deck over here. And the black deck are basically cards that have an immediate effect. So for example, this one is called Expansion, and it says add a ship to your fleet. So each player has a couple of extra dice off to the side, and when you get this, you get to immediately roll one of your expansion ships and put it in an orbital position on a planet with one of your cubes. So if I got that, I could immediately roll this and say drop it right there. Then this card would get discarded and we'd bring out a fresh one to replace it. The white cards are advancements that go next to your board like so, and they become a permanent ability. So for example, here's one that's called Tactical, and it says once per turn as a free action, move a ship a total of 1 space. You can attack with the move. So that could be a permanent ability that you would carry through the rest of the game. These you can only have 3 of, but if you were to acquire a 4th one, you can replace one of the ones you already have with the newly acquired one, discarding the old one. That basically covers all of the basics of the game, but like I said, each ship also has a special ability, so those are worth mentioning. The 1 value ship, which is very powerful but very slow, has the ability to attack 1 enemy next to it. So if it were here, it could attack the enemy next to it, and that's for free. That doesn't count as one of your 3 actions. So it can do that, plus it can do its normal, as one of your actions, you could have it attack. So it can basically attack twice in a turn. The 2 value has the ability to transport other ships. So for example, for one of my actions, I could say I'm going to move this ship here, and before I do so, I can place the ship that's next to it on top of it. I can move the 2 spaces I'm entitled to, and then I can drop it off at an adjacent spot. And then from there, I could use an action to have this ship move if I want. The only limitation is while transporting, this ship cannot attack. So that's that ability. The ability of a 3 is a warp, which basically lets you swap that die for any other die. So we could put that one there and put that one there. And you can just warp like that. The 4 lets you modify it to either a 5 or a 3. So that lets you reconfigure a ship without having to roll and get a random result. The 5 lets you maneuver, which basically means that when this guy is moving, he can move diagonally. So for his 5, he could, for example, go like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and in there, something like that. And the 6 basically gets a free reconfigure. So that reconfigure, again, is using an action to roll, and whatever you roll, that's what you are now. A 6 can do that for free without taking an action. So those are basically all the actions of the game, the special abilities of the ships. I've explained how combat works, and again, the goal of the game is to get all of your quantum cubes onto the board. You want to be the first player to do that, and you are the winner of the game. So that hopefully gives you a general idea of how a game of Quantum works. As you probably noticed, one of the highlights of Quantum is the beautiful graphic design and production values of it. At least in my opinion, I think it's a very nice game to look at. I like the big chunky dice that you use for your ships. You also have those nice dice for combat. And I like how they use the same dice on your board to track your combat dominance and your research level. So I like these. I think they're nice, good quality components. I don't know that came across in the video necessarily, but the tiles for the board are a nice thickness, nice and durable, and the player boards are also a nice thick cardboard and seem very durable too. I like the nice clean layout of everything. For example, the map tiles Like, they have a nice space aesthetic, but there's not a lot of unnecessary graphics on here. And really, all you need to know is where the planet is. You need kind of this grid around the border of the planet, and you need that value of the planet. And the graphics do not distract you from all of that. Same thing with those player boards. They're very clean, nice layout. All the information you need is on them, and it just has a nice clean look. So I like that about the game. One thing I will say though about the aesthetics of the game is, while I do like the big chunky dice and the translucency of them and everything, it's a little it loses some of the theme that your ships are just represented by these dice. It's fine for what it is, and in a way it is incredibly clever, because the value on the die tells you both the attack power and the movement value. It doesn't really tell you the special ability, but the special abilities are on the player board, so it's very easy to reference them. And essentially, since the special abilities are tied to the number, it's just that communicates a lot of information very simply. I think that's really clever, but it's not very thematic. So you have to kind of accept the fact that this has only a light veneer of that sci-fi theme to it. It's really just an abstract strategy game. But once you accept that fact, it is very clever. It looks nice. I like all that about it. I do like it's very modular. You can do a lot of different setups with the board because it's made of those modular tiles. The board can adapt well to 2 to 4 players because of that. And I also like those cards for the advancements. I like that you have 2 decks of cards. Some of them are like permanent abilities, and some of them are just instantaneous effects. I like that split, and it's really clean how that's done. And it's a lot of fun kind of weighing your options. Since you qualify for either on any occasion, it's neat to sort of weigh your options. Do I take this immediate effect that will help me out right now, or do I take something that will help me out more long term? And so that's a really interesting aspect to the game. So yeah, a lot of interesting things to the game. I like the decisions that you need to make. It's cool how the game gives you kind of like that ability to just research with an action. So if you have a spare action on your turn that you're not quite sure, what you could accomplish with it, you can always just throw it into research, kind of build up that research level so that you can get another card. I also like how the game encourages combat by basically rewarding a lot of successful combats with another cube on the board, and that's your end goal. But you can also just try to build those cubes by cleverly arranging your ships around the planets. And so you're not forced to have that direct conflict, but the game does encourage the direct conflict. And also the fact that there's no negative consequences for attacking and failing your attack roll also encourages you to engage in that conflict. So lots of clever, interesting tactical decisions to make from turn to turn. I wouldn't say there's a lot of deep strategy here, but there is like those clever tactical moves from moment to moment. I like, again, the modularity of it. I like the scalability of it from 2 to 4 players, and it works well. Lots of clever mechanisms in here, and very streamlined. So it just has a really nice, clean, streamlined feel to it. Now, personally for me, it doesn't captivate my imagination because it is essentially just a abstract strategy game, and I can see the value of that, but it's not really my forte. I like something with a little more theme to it. So I like the space theme, but not the fact that it's almost non-existent in the actual gameplay. One thing I think they could have done to add a little more theme to it, and also a little more variety, is you have those nice player boards, which are nice, and they have lots of information on them, but they're rather large, and there's plenty of space on here, I think, where you could have fit in like personal player powers, like individualized powers for each of the 4 factions. As it is, they have these 4 factions, but it's just 4 different colors, really. So that would have added maybe a little more theme and also a little more variety to the gameplay, depending on which faction you end up with, could affect your strategy a little bit. So that's like one way that it could be improved slightly, but overall I'd say it's a good game if you're looking for an abstract strategy game with just a hint of theme. So those are my thoughts on it. Not exactly for me, but recommended if that's what you're looking for. Again, my name is Nathan. This is Nice at Dice. Thank you so much for watching, and you enjoy the rest of your day.